Make sure you subscribe to both our YouTube channel and our RSS feed for all future conversations here at Youth Inc.
I am Aaron West. I am your Youth Inc. soccer ambassador, and this is honestly the perfect place for me to be. I went fully into the world of soccer off the pitch, traveled all around the world chasing this beautiful game, and I feel like I've immersed myself so fully in this game that I have to share the knowledge I've accrued over these decades now. I have such a passion for this sport that I want others to share in it and learn about it with me. And it's a long journey, but we do it together. All right, I'm honored to be joined by my colleague Stu Holden, former U.S. men's national teamer, current lead analyst for Fox Sports, part owner of Mallorca. Stu, how you feeling today, brother?
I'm good, man. You know, my kids are at school. I got some downtime here. I'm hanging out. Always a pleasure to see you and hop on. And I know we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today that I'm passionate about, which is, youth sports. And I've got a young athlete. My kids are 9 and 4, and I'm right in the thick of it, man. So, I'm every day. I'm basically a Uber driver that drives my kids from activity to activity, and I'm merely a vessel at this point.
I love that because one of our connecting threads is Steve Nash, who I met you actually playing in his pickup game. I got the chance to interview Steve, and he literally said the exact same thing. He was like, my life now is I'm an Uber driver. I'm shuttling my kids back and forth to practices, to activities, everything. How are you enjoying it overall, just being a father, Stu?
I love it. Honestly, I felt a totally new sense of being and purpose when I had kids. I've always felt that I wanted to be a dad, and then you see these little humans come out, and you realize that you made these humans, and you kind of go on this journey with them. And I mean, I'm not even exaggerating here. I probably am more excited about my daughter's games on the weekend than her. I wake up in the morning, I've got the snacks packed, I've got the water bottles. I'm ready to go, and I'm like a nervous parent on the sideline watching my kids play sports. And you talk about Steve. I was actually with Steve last weekend, and we're best friends. We share so many similarities in the ways in which we approach youth sports and kids and parenting. And he's a great person that I lean on in times when I'm going through this, because I think one of the main things that I've realized as a parent, and this just doesn't pertain to youth sports, is that we don't know everything. And, the way that our parents parented us and our friends parent their kids, everybody does it differently. And I think there's a sense of community, and you lean on friends for advice, but ultimately you make your own decisions. And I think you have to also be confident in your own parenting style, and also find what works for you, because what works for you is not necessarily what works for everybody else. And I think that's an important theme to consider as we go through here and talk about youth sports, and that how I approach it with my daughter and my daughter's drive and mentality, and her willingness to learn and accept different things is going to be very different from every other girl on her team. And so I'm trying to find, even as I go along, what is the best way to approach her development, and ultimately what is the goal here.
Yeah.
And I always think the biggest goal in youth sports is to make sure our kids are having fun, and that's going to set the foundation for everything else that they're going to do. And that's definitely how I holistically approach youth sports with my kids.
Yeah. Now from the outside, Stu, you seem to be a person that is relentlessly positive. We've seen us, the viewing public, we've seen you go through a lot of adversity on the playing pitch, in life. Unfortunately lost your father, but you seem every day to approach it with a positivity. And much like my father, he was a super, super happy, positive person every day, going at it to give it his best. What is one lesson about perseverance that you're most focused on passing down to your kids?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think when you face adversity at different stages in your life, those are the moments you learn the most. And I think if you can approach it through that lens where, sure, you're allowed to feel pain and suffering, and you're allowed to feel sorry for yourself in those moments, because it's difficult, whatever the amount of adversity is that you face. And I always have said this from a couple years ago when I had my first big injury as a pro. I'd actually had a knee injury in high school where I couldn't play soccer. I was out for 6 months. Man, at 16, 17 years old,
It's a lifetime,
it kind of
man.
feels like the world is over, right? I mean, like, and I, in hindsight, in retrospect, I was definitely depressed. I wasn't able to self-diagnose at that age, but my grades dropped. I went from a straight A student to B's and C's. I was partying more than I should have. I was out with my friends. I was out late. My habits dropped. My discipline and my focus wavered. And I was able to get back on track, and through the help of my parents. But I've talked to my parents after the fact, and they always said, man, we didn't know which way you were going to go, which road you were going to take at that point. And ultimately, I found sports once again, and I realized what I needed to do to get back to that. And that was my ultimate goal. And I loved that so much. And I had that feeling that, if I couldn't do this, then everything else was going to fall apart underneath. And I learned so much about myself at such a young age. And I always have said, I wish a healthy dose of adversity for many young athletes and even for parents, and something that they can overcome. Yeah. But I think they need to feel that and feel when things are difficult in order to have the tools to kind of push through that. And so, whether that's, I'm trying to think about a young athlete, right? And my daughter, who's 9 years old, is it the losses? Is it moments in practice where maybe she doesn't feel as good as somebody else? And, she's been in a situation recently where she was playing up with an older team, and the whole team was told to do 15 to 20 juggles before practice started. She hadn't really worked a lot on her juggling, and she couldn't get 10 at that moment. And she felt embarrassed and she felt self-conscious. And she spoke to me about that after. And I said, well, the only way to overcome that is for you to practice and to get better, and then to be in a position where you're more confident in your skills. So she was out there and she was working on juggling and trying it 2-3 times a week. And ultimately then that led to her being in a better position. Yeah. And she was more confident in herself, and she walked out on practice and her chest was puffed up. And those are like little moments, because I don't like at this age to put such an emphasis on the wins and losses, because I don't think that that's important. But I think there needs to be moments of data points that kids can look at and feel that give them confidence, and trying to find ways to not manufacture adversity intentionally. But when those moments arise, can you teach your young athlete about why they felt a certain way, talking to them about ways in which they can battle through that, whether that's anxiety, because a lot of kids feel fear when there's pressure situations and they have to stand over a penalty kick, or their team isn't doing well and a coach yells at them. Because I see a lot of kids that, crumble when a coach is really difficult with them. And again, just trying to help them see it through a lens of, he's yelling at you because he believes in you, and he believes you can be better, and he sees that there's something there, and he knows if you work on that, you're going to be better, he or she. And so I think those are, it all comes down to messaging and how you message your kid after the fact from a positive standpoint. And that's how I constantly try to look through life. And even with regards to my own career, I had to retire at 30 years old. I wished I could have played another 10 years. And people, the first thing they'll say to me was, man, I felt so bad for you when you had, that injury and that injury. And I said, sure, I would have loved to play 10 more years. I was playing in the Premier League. I did this. But if I put myself as 8-year-old Stu, what would I have wanted to do in my life? Playing the World Cup, playing the Olympics, playing the Premier League. I checked all of those off. Yeah. And I prefer to look through life from that lens as opposed to the other one, because you can't change what has happened. You can only focus on the future. And that's, I think, how I ultimately allow myself to message when it comes to positivity.
I love that. Now, with Steve Nash, I talked about this. With high-level professionals, when you're now raising kids, you've got to see them get coached every day. Obviously, you've got your own beliefs, your own biases, your own way to do things. But how do you kind of step back, allow the coach to do this thing? And also, what do you think is the biggest thing you see coaches getting wrong when you're watching these so far?
Yeah, it's the hardest thing, honestly, is a former professional in the sport that now your kids are playing. And I have said from the beginning too, I would love my kids to play soccer because I love it and it's a big part of what we do. I still work in the sport. But if they don't play it, that's fine. They just don't eat dinner at night. No, I'm kidding. Look, I have always tried to create an environment where my kids love the game as well, because I think that we all can love it together and it's something we can share in. And I've had balls all over my house since a very young age. My kids can't walk to the kitchen without knocking into a ball and then touching it with their feet. And coaching is a big part of that. It's developing, but I think they have to ultimately want to play the sport, learn the sport, get better at the sport, or they're not going to enjoy the sport. And I think setting a foundation and a base layer that comes from within the house, where it comes from a safe place. They know that they love it. I'm always here as a resource, but I've always told my daughter especially, I said, look, if you ask me to come back out in the backyard, I'll drop anything I'm doing and we'll go out there and we'll work on whatever you want to work on. We'll play as long as you want to play, but I don't always want to be the one that's pushing you and trying to motivate you to play soccer. I'll do as much or as little as you want. Right. And then even when we're out in the backyard and we're playing and I'm coaching, I notice when she reaches the point of she's not enjoying it now and it feels like I'm forcing her to, continue to work on this and work on this touch and take one more shot. And at that point, I try to back off and just say, you know what, let's just smack shots on each other and kick it however you're kicking and let's have fun. And I want to see that joy and that smile on her face. And so when I go to practice, I stand off on the side. Actually, a lot of times now I'm trying to kind of just drop my daughter off and let the coach because I don't want them to feel the pressure of a former professional athlete standing over and micromanaging. Yeah, like everything that they're doing. I want my daughter to have that relationship with their coach, with her coach as well, where she trusts her coach to give her guidance and pointers and feedback, and then not looking at dad and saying, is that right? Is that how I should be doing it? And sure, I noticed things that I would do very differently. And ultimately that then comes down to my selection as a parent of trying to find the right club, trying to find the right environment that I feel my daughter is going to have to thrive and succeed. And then I trust in that leadership and then that coaching as well, that they're going to give my daughter what she needs as a young athlete, as opposed to me coming in and saying initially, I don't like that coach. I don't like this. And then constantly thinking, I need to talk to the coach. I need to ask her why she's doing this. Why is she coaching and making these decisions? Why is she running a training like this? I think you have to trust in the coach and the environment. And sure, you can have conversations with coaches, but I think it's one thing that parents get wrong at an early age is they're overstepping and not necessarily empowering their athlete. For example, if my daughter comes in and she says to me, Dad, I'm not happy with the amount I'm playing and the position that the coach is playing in me and playing me in and the things we're doing in practice and why is this and why is this? I say, go talk to your coach and ask her why and ask her, what the reasoning is behind that. What are the things you can do? Ask your coach. What does she feel you need to do to either get more playing time, improve this part of your game, improve, whatever you want to do in practice, but have that conversation. And it have ever got to a point where I felt that as a dad, there was something egregious that I needed to step in, then I would talk to the coach. But I also think it's very empowering for young athletes. And also you're showing trust in the coach that your kid is going to go and talk and have those conversations. And I think they learn more through those moments than I do as a parent. So yeah.
What's up, guys? Do you want custom fanwear like this cricket shirt for Charlotte Christian School?
We've got premium apparel from your favorite brands.
The best part about it is I don't have to just wear it to Charlotte Christian's events. I can wear it to golf. I can wear it to lunch. It's turned into my uniform. Go right now over to youth.inc, sign up for our newsletter. It talks about our podcast for that week, our interview guests, all the breaking news across the landscape of youth sports, and you can win one piece of merch for your school by going to sign up today.
And remember, it's not .com, it's youth.inc. Now, back to our episode.
Now, you seem like you're being incredibly intentional about how you're raising your kids, specifically in sports, how the environment you put them in, the coaches you select. Over 60% of youth athletes, you mentioned this before with anxiety and the post-match car ride. Over 60% of athletes cite that post-match car ride, that talk with parents, as causing them anxiety. How do you kind of avoid that? What is your post-match talk to your kids after a game, after practice, to kind of debrief and let them parse through that?
Yeah, the car ride is so important because I think when kids get into that car and they've been in this intense environment, whatever it is, a game, a practice, everything, they get in and they're in a familiar setting with their parents now. And I think that's the first moment that they can kind of exhale in some cases. I think in other cases, as you cited there, kids will get in that car and they'll have a fear or an anxiety of, how are my parents going to prod me? Man, my parents are going to be disappointed in my performance, because the athlete knows deep within whether they played well or not. I knew this as a player after the game, and I would almost try to, in some moments, try to talk to the person that I felt would give me the most positive outlook after some games. Other games when I wasn't quite sure, did I do well or not? But ultimately, I think I wanted to hear the truth. And in these situations, as a young athlete, it's very different to being a professional. And I think people will have a hard time separating the two. And when my daughter gets in that car, the first thing I ask her is, what are your thoughts on the game today? And it's not just something as simple as, did you have fun? Because the kid can say, yeah, I had fun. But I like to ask leading questions to get a sense of her feeling and where she is at. So she might come back with everything from, we didn't play well today, but I thought we made great adjustments in the second half. And she'll often echo what the coach had kind of given her post-match. So I'll ask a little bit more to try to get a little bit more of how she's feeling. And then I adjust my questioning based off of her answers, because if she's in a positive mood, I'm going to continue in that trend. And I want to hear more of the positives that she had, but then also ask her areas in which I feel like I want to hear her general analysis on where she maybe felt the team could have done better that day, or maybe she could have done better. And if it's overly negative, where she's like, oh man, we had such a bad loss today. We lost 7-1. Our team couldn't do this. I try to focus really on the positives and bringing her mood up, and making sure that she still is able to extrapolate that the winning and losing at this age isn't important. And it's about, if they were losing 6-0 in the first half, did they get back in the second half and brought the game closer? Because I think we put such an emphasis on wins and losses at such a young age. And I think that's losing the plot here. It's A, did the kids have fun? And B, are the kids developing and getting better in what they're doing? And if you're losing to the best team in the state, because I'm finding this, that parents have rankings and players have rankings and coaches. I mean, we're 9 years old. What are we doing? Parents will walk into a game saying, we're playing the best team in the state today. And that creates almost an anxiety for kids too early, as opposed to being like, hey guys, this is going to be a good game. This team is a good team. You guys are going to get a great opportunity to challenge yourselves. And I love when my daughter's team got smashed by a team 9-1 the first time. The second time they played them, they lost 3-2. To me, that's a huge win for our team, because we weren't as talented. We're not as good at this age, but our team made a significant improvement over the course of the season. And that's what it's all about, really. And so I think when you get in that car ride as a parent, you have to consider that your kid is already going to be feeling pressure. They already have a feeling themselves of how that game went. And then how can you talk to them and message to them and have a conversation, but frame it from a positive standpoint and make sure that you're helping them see the positives in whatever it is, and leading them to also understand, I had a lot of fun out there today. And that's the most important part.
Love that. Now, Stu, you've been a huge advocate, a very vocal advocate in the grassroots soccer, a need for change in the grassroots soccer in this country. What is the biggest change you'd like to see in the economics of youth soccer in the U.S., and how can parents advocate for those changes?
Look, the easiest thing to say, and everybody says, is that soccer is too expensive. But the reality is a lot of youth sports are overly expensive, and because they are a business. Now, somebody has to pay for something along the way. We can't just hand out free sports across the board and say, you guys go at it, because somebody is fitting the bill on that. Okay. But I think we have to find ways through, top down organizations like US Soccer and MLS, and they already are. So I hate to just say like they have to make soccer more inexpensive for everybody. I think the most important thing is having more opportunities for people to play, and whether that is at school or turning certain parks and working with cities and local organizations to how can you create safe places to play. Now, whether that's inner city areas, underfunded parts of cities, and turning these parks that have just terrible grass areas, but putting down turf and programming, after school programming, working with local organizations to basically just give avenues for kids to play that aren't necessarily club soccer and aren't elite level, but pathways that it all can kind of funnel up to when you get to a certain age that soccer becomes more inexpensive because now there's just more opportunities and there's more competition that kids have to play these sports. I get asked it all the time. I don't know the answer candidly, other than I love seeing the work that different organizations are doing, from nonprofits to local clubs, that whatever they're spending on, professional clubs are spending on the professional side. They're also investing on making sure that there's opportunities for kids that can't afford and can't play the sport at that level, for them to be able to play and continue their journey. And that's everything from access to coaching, coaching education on even coaches that can't afford the licenses or don't have the resources to be able to improve, because if you have better coaches, you're going to have better players. And then the participation sticks around, because I hate seeing the statistic that a certain amount of kids, whatever the exact statistic is though, but after 13 years old, you see a huge drop off in participation in soccer in this country. And that's because kids, they can't keep up, because they're not getting the same coaching. They're not getting the same opportunities. They don't have the same access. And then all of a sudden they're not enjoying it. And that's what it's about. If you're not enjoying it and you're not able to keep up and you don't feel that your level is good, then you're not going to play that sport. And that's my biggest concern, I think, for youth athletes. And I think it's the biggest thing we get wrong, is that it becomes cost prohibitive at a certain age. And we have to continue to find ways to fund programming to keep these kids in the game and keep them enjoying it. And whether that leads to a college education, a professional, access to the sport. I just think that sports in life are the most important thing that kids can do from a team perspective, competition perspective, that sets them up for success in life.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that. Now, Stu, you've got a really, really unique upbringing in this country, in the sport. You grew up in Scotland, moved to Houston. You've seen a lot of different types of football. You've seen a lot of kind of different youth develop, having worked in this sport for a very, very long time. I personally think that youth development, especially on the men's side, has grown by leaps and bounds since I was playing as a youngster, but we still have a long, long way to go. You also uniquely work with Mallorca. You're a part owner there. So my question is, how has your time coming up in this game, in this country, in Scotland, seeing how Spain does what they do, affected your view on developing youth talent? And where do you think we are as a country right now, and what lessons can we learn from European academies, continue to learn? Because I think we've taken a lot of those lessons so far.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing I have noticed is that globally, young kids outside of the United States, and it has grown significantly here, but outside of the United States, soccer is by far the biggest sport in the world. And every kid grows up playing soccer in the playground, on the street, at school, and in local parks, in clubs. And they have this inherent advantage because of the years and years of history where soccer really is just so ingrained in culture. And that sets the base and the foundation for every kid to love the sport. They watch the sport, they consume it throughout the day. And so when I go to Spain, one of my favorite things about that has been when we go out for a dinner, which in Spain is like 10 o'clock at night. And my kids are beyond tired, but we sit in these little courtyards where all these restaurants are. And in the middle of those courtyards, almost every city we've been to, Sevilla, Mallorca, Madrid, Barcelona, kids are just playing pickup soccer. Yeah. Finish their dinner after 10 minutes. They walk out there and they just start playing. And they play pickup with random kids. They're meeting other parents, other people, and it's all around soccer. And I just think that gives them such an advantage over kids just loving the sport. The second thing I've noticed and found, and just a quick note on that, I just hope that we continue to foster an environment where soccer continues to grow and becomes a bigger part of that, but that not everything is organized. I think that's the biggest thing, is that everything here I find with youth sports, it's an organized practice. It's an organized 1v1 personal training. It's an organized team. There's not just like, hey, I've texted 3 or 4 of the other parents. You guys kids don't walk home from school as much anymore, at least where I live in LA. But like, we're going to go, like, you guys go meet at the park. The parents will sit off on the side. No intervention from the parents. Just go play. Have fun. And my daughter actually did that with some of her former teammates. She was on a boys team for the first couple years, and the moms were all got together during winter break. They texted, they took the kids up to the local park. They played for 2.5 hours. They forgot how long they were playing. Like that's what we need to create, is more situations like that where it can be kid-led. They feel free. They can make their own rules. They can foul each other. They can fight in moments.
Try things.
Yeah, they can be creative. They can try things. They can do all of this stuff. And I think what I've noticed in youth soccer in Spain specifically at the younger ages is they don't keep score. Now, sure, the kids are keeping score internally because they're inherently competitive in different ways. My son, I can't even play 2 minutes without him saying, "Daddy, I'm winning 5-6," or I'm winning 24-0,
right.
whatever score I'm letting him beat me by. But so the kids are going to compete, but you're setting the foundational principle of like, guys, have fun, go play the game, try stuff, take players on. Do that. And I think that I love when you're not putting that pressure so much on them from an early age, where they start to feel things that are not important. And important is, again, it's fun and development. Those should always be the lens in which you're looking through youth sports, through coaching. If you're coaching a team of 9-year-olds, that's how you should approach the practice that day is, okay, we're going to work on technical stuff, but how can I make that fun? How can I keep the kids engaged? How can I keep them moving throughout a session? Gosh, I watched some of the warm-ups from some of the other teams, and it's that
standing in lines. Oh, man.
Lay it into the coach. They lay it back. They take a shot. They go back to the end of the line. I mean, come on. At least set them in 2 lines. Let them play 2 passes, take a shot. Let them take another player on, 2v1s. Like, there's just ways in which I think you can easily think about trying to make the sport more fun and approachable, but also free. It's like, we over-parent these days. We over engage in things that our parents didn't. And those are some of my best memories. I don't know about you, Aaron, but when you were a kid, some of my best memories were just throwing down T-shirts and going and playing 6v6 with my buddies in the pouring down rain in the middle of nowhere. And like, you come out of that and you trudge home and your clothes are soaked, but you got the biggest smile on your face. Like, that's what I ultimately want to find for my daughter.
Love that. Well, Stu, thank you so much for your time. Introspective and insightful as always. I really appreciate it, man. And best of luck with everything moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, bro. Happy to do it.